Fountain pens and inks. Obsession? Maybe. Welcome to Urban Ink Spot. My name is Janine, and today we're going to do a couple of different things. We're going to first of all review some notes from my April 2025 currently inked fountain pens. I had some really great pens inked. I had some duds inked. And we're going to talk a little bit about that very quickly, kind of give you some context on how these went before we turn the page and start talking through what I'm going to have inked for May 2025. And then I'm going to share a little bit of information about what is on deck for June 2025. So to start, in April 2025, I had I had 6 pens inked. And I'll tell you what, it actually felt like there were too many pens inked. Because in addition to these 6 that we had here, I also had a few other pens that I was carrying over from March 2025 that I was trying to wrap up, finish out those pen ink fills. And it felt like a lot. I really felt like I had a lot going on. So I had some real bangers in this month, and I also had some real duds. And then I had a couple that were right in the middle. And I would say probably the best pen and ink pairing for last month was my Pilot Elite 95S. I absolutely loved this pen. It was super flowy. I just grabbed for it all the time. The nib was fantastic. It was a really juicy writing experience. And so this pen, and also my Pilot Vanishing Point, this pen also turned out to be a tremendous writing experience. Now, I was journaling with this pen and also using it for work notes. I was mostly using the Pilot Vanishing Point for work notes and planning. And, these were the two that I just kept grabbing for over and over. In terms of the duds, and I think this is probably going to surprise some folks, my Pilot Custom 823. And it wasn't because the pen was not amazing. It's because of the ink that was in this pen. And it was dry. And I had a ton of hard starts. And, I actually think that this ink is a little bit suspect. I went to go swap out that ink at some point, in preparation for May 2025. And I went and looked at the bottle, and I think I had some things floating in the bottle. So I've currently got that Lennon Toolbar Sesame Oil quarantined, and I'm just going to watch that ink for a while. I'm not going to put it in any other pens. But this pen it was not a good one. The other one that was a dud was my Pilot Metropolitan, not because of the pen, but again, another ink problem. And this was because the Lennon Toolbar Bubble Tea was just too light. It was unreadable, and you can kind of see I've got some writing on the other side of the page, and I've got a little bit of show through, and it makes it almost impossible to use. So I inked it with another ink, and it still just didn't quite do it. And then the pens that were somewhere in between, not for anything wrong with the pen, I just didn't really reach for it. This was the Pilot Prera, and this was inked with Diamine Flame, and it was a really pretty match. I did have this pen inked up, and it was inside one of my journals in the little pen loop inside of my journal, so maybe it was out of reach and therefore out of mind, but it just wasn't really something that I reached for very often. And then the final one that was kind of in the middle, kind of a meh, although it was a great writing experience overall, I just didn't reach for it very often. It was my Pilot Custom 74, and this was inked with Pelikan Edelstein Golden Lapis. So we're not going to spend a ton of time right now talking about how these pens and ink performed. I will talk about this later on in the video, but I don't want to spend too much time on this piece because I do want to get jumped forward into what I plan to have inked for May 2025. And that's going to be these 4 over here. So let me move these off off screen. And if you want to stay tuned for a little bit more detail about how these guys did, how I scored them, what it was that I did and didn't like about them in particular, I'll include that towards the end of the video, and I'll have chapters here for us if we want to move forward to that. Okay, so let's move these guys a little bit off screen, and we'll talk about what I'm going to have inked for May 2025. Now, because I really believe that the ink in the Pilot Custom 823 was the problem, I decided to give myself a very full fill of one of my favorite inks. Now, I did a 8 more pen questions not too long ago where I talked about this ink being one of my favorites. It was my second favorite out of the question, if you could only use one ink for the rest of your life. This ink was the runner-up, and I decided to go ahead and ink it into this pen. And so I'm really hopeful with putting one of my favorite inks into what is turning out to be one of my favorite pens. I'm really hoping to set this pen up for success. So this is my Pilot Custom 823. And this is a medium nib. And I have this inked with Kyo no Outtro Adzukiiro. Let's add a little paperweight here so it's easier to keep this page writable. Okay, so this is my Pilot Custom 823 in a medium nib, and it's inked with Kyo no Outtro Adzukiiro. And I really do love this ink. It is very juicy. It is a beautiful pen. It's like it reminds me of the Adzuki bean, like a red kidney bean. I mean, I believe that's actually what it's named after. And this writing experience so far has been really enjoyable. I've been journaling with it over the last 2 days, and I have not had any hard starts. I haven't had any issues with it. And so it really does cause me to think that what we were dealing with was just an ink pairing that wasn't a good match. I do think that other ink was pretty dry, and so that might have been contributing to the hard starts, but it also might have been that there's something wrong with the ink. The ink may have at some point gotten contaminated, so we'll see. Like I said, I'm gonna pull it to the side and just watch it, see if those little floaties make their way back up to the top, and if I need to get rid of that ink and just dispose of it, I will do that. But I want to just see what happens with that ink before I take too many drastic measures. The second pen that I have inked is returning from last month. Now, I did not reach for this pen very much. I did journal with it a little bit, but it's kind of a shame that I didn't journal with it as much as I would have liked to, because it is a really beautiful pairing. And this is my Pilot Custom 74. And this was originally a medium nib that I had ground into a journaler nib by Gina Salarino of Custom Nib Studio. And this is the very first pen I've ever had custom ground, and I love this pen. This pen is sentimental to me for a number of reasons, but it is my favorite pen. And this ink pairing is really gorgeous. I have this inked with, hello Ahsoka. Hi. Hello. Hang on one second, folks. Hello. Hello. What you doing? sit on my lap for a little bit. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is, sorry about the weird posture here. I've got a kitten who wants to hang out on my lap, so let me actually get her settled. Okay, so this is Pelikan Edelstein Golden Lapis. And like I was saying, I think this is a gorgeous ink. It is a gorgeous pen and ink pairing, and I do think with having fewer pens inked this month, it will be easier for me. I will be more likely to grab for this pen and ink pairing. Hello, big girl. Hi, sweetie. And that's the Pilot Custom 74 in a journaler nib, inked with Pelikan Edelstein Golden Lapis. The third pen that I am bringing into the lineup this month is my Sailor Pro Gear Slim in Iris Nebula. And actually, let me move back to a previous month where I had this pen inked. Was it this one? It was not. The last time I had this inked was in March of 2025. And at the time, I said that this is a standout pen in the collection, and that this, when I had it with the Pilot Iroshizuku Asagao, I said that this was a really great pairing. I really did love this writing experience. And let me show you what that ink looked like as I was writing with it. So really lovely. What I noticed about this pen is that, did I say it here? No, I didn't. It doesn't look like I did. Now, I know when I was talking about this and recapping it, one of the things that comes to mind when I'm writing with this pen is it feels kind of smudgy. And I was talking about that when I did an earlier currently inked. What I wanted to do was find an ink that seemed to embody that smudgy kind of feeling. And so I was at the Big Apple Pen Club meetup, which is a pen meetup in New York, and I got a couple of samples from that meetup, and I was trying to figure out which one I wanted to put into this pen. Well, I decided to go for the Herbin Shogun, and that's what I put in this pen for this month. And I'm really hoping that I'm going to get that payoff that I was looking for of that kind of smudgy writing experience as I use this pen, and just kind of really enjoy that feedback that we get from the Sailor nibs. So this is my, actually, let me give this a little bit of a agitation to make sure I'm able to get some of those particles in the writing. And this is my Sailor Pro Gear Slim Iris Nebula. And this is in a broad. And this is inked with Herbin Shogun. And I really am expecting that this is going to give me that nice payoff that I'm looking for, with that feedback experience, with the shimmer, with the dark gray that seems to be giving me some really nice shading already. And I'm really hopeful about this pairing here. And then the fourth pen that I have inked this is a relatively new pen to me. This is a TWSBI Eco, and this is in the cream and rose gold colorway. This is in a medium nib, and this is cream. Hello, Ahsoka. And rose gold. Hello, honey. Hello. And this is inked with P.W. Akkerman, SBRE brown. And I really do like this pairing. This was recommended to me when I bought the pen. The person at the checkout desk said that a lot of people really enjoy putting she said a sepia ink. And I didn't have anything named sepia, but I knew I did have something in that general colorway. So I have inked this pen a couple of times. It did show up in an earlier currently inked, and I have filled it a couple of times, and I decided to bring it back into this lineup because I've really been enjoying it. I think it's been a nice pairing, and I wanted to be able to have a pen that I could take with me on the go and know that it would be like an everyday writer, but didn't cost me a lot of money, since the other 3 pens that I am going to be writing with this month are a little pricier. And I am not someone who feels super comfortable yet just taking all of my pens out on the go. So I like to be a little... usually my pens do their home bodies. So these are the 4 pens and inks that I'm going to be writing with in May 2025. And I will also be finishing out... this tiny bit of fill that is left in my Pilot Prera. There's not a lot left in this fill, but I'm going to go ahead and finish this one out. There's also a little bit of ink left in this one, and we'll talk about this here in a moment. So, like I said, these are the 4 pens that I'm introducing into the lineup, and really looking forward to this colorway with this set of pens, and then just working my way through this lineup for the month. So let's talk a little bit more. Let's go into a little more detail on what happened in April 2025. And let me just kind of go into a little bit more detail about these. So as I was sharing, the Pilot Elite 95S in a medium nib that had been ground into a cursive italic, this one turned out to be my favorite pairing of the month. I refilled it once, and I grabbed for it over and over because, I wanted to take it to a meetup that I went to, and I wanted to show off the pairing, so I filled it up again. And it has been the one that I grabbed for a ton. Really juicy, super bouncy nib, super wet ink. It was one of my favorite inks. It was a total perfect match. So it was really hard for me not to bring it into the May lineup. And I'm not certain yet that I'm not going to. There's a little bit of ink left in this pen, and there is a strong possibility that I'm going to want to just add it right back in, because I have just loved this writing experience so much. So I ended up giving this an A+. I gave it a 9.8 overall rating, and it broke out like this. I gave it a 10 for aesthetics, because I really like the way the pen matchup looks with the ink flowing out of this pen. The writing experience, also, like I said, an absolute 10. I gave it a 9 for versatility and reliability because it was so juicy that if I was using it for any of my work planning, it was hard for me to move around my planner very quickly because it took so long to dry because it was so juicy. And I think, yeah, I said here, I envision I'll be waiting for ink to dry for the whole month of April 2025. Sounds lovely, actually. And you know what? In fact, it was. And that is exactly what the payoff was. I did find myself waiting a lot for this to dry, and I did not mind it at all. It was just an absolute banger of a writing experience. For shareability, yeah, I took this. This was the one that I really wanted to take to the pen club meetup. I was really excited about sharing this with other fountain pen enthusiasts, and everyone who picked it up and wrote with it really did enjoy it. Some people had never heard of the Kiyono Outtro line and were really interested in that ink line in particular. Personal enjoyment, yeah, absolutely. I gave it a 10. The next pen, as I was talking about earlier, was previously inked with Lennon Toolbar Sesame oil, and it was my Pilot Custom 823 in a medium nib. And I was really hopeful, you can see on my notes, I was really hopeful that I liked the combination. I had seen sesame oil in another pen that I'd had in a previous lineup, and it was kind of messing with my brain a little bit because I had a different ink in this pen and I had sesame oil in another pen, and I was like, I feel like, these two should be swapped. So I did that. I put sesame oil in this pen, and it did not turn out to be a good month for this pairing. So the aesthetics, it was a 7. Even when I was writing with it, I was like, I don't think that this is the right aesthetic experience that I was looking for, but I gave the writing experience a 5 because you can see I've got some hard starts here. I've got I had to pass over something a couple of times to actually get it to write. I felt like, it wasn't laying down ink the way I was expecting this to lay down ink. And it was too dry. And I actually am starting to notice that this nib is a little drier than I thought it would have been. Because I did have another medium. Now, this is a modified medium. This isn't a cursive italic. And I also had my Pilot Custom 74, which started as a medium. And this was also modified nib. But out of all three of these, this was just being the nib that came with it, which should have been tremendous. This writing experience was my least favorite out of my at least original medium nibs for my Pilot. So it wasn't great. So I gave it a 5 for the writing experience. I gave it a 4 for versatility and reliability because of all the hard starts. It was really problematic. I gave it a 5 for shareability and a 4 for personal enjoyment. So it came in with a D rating overall with a 5 numerical rating. And you know what? It's really just a shame. I mean, I was really excited about it. It is such a great pen, but even how amazing this pen was, it wasn't enough to overcome how dry the ink was in this pen. And overall, it was just not enjoyable. So I'm tempted to modify this, maybe at a very minimum, make this a little bit juicier. But before I do that, that's why I've moved this into May, because I want to give this pen an opportunity to just be a rock star, because I know it has the potential to be a rock star. The third pen that I had inked for April was my Pilot Custom 74, as I shared with a medium nib that had been modified into a journaler, and I had this inked with Pelikan Edelstein Gold and Lapis. And this one, it was an all-out, it was a 10 across the board. It got an A+, one of the top rated pens for this month. I just didn't reach for it, which was also a shame. I just didn't grab for it as much as I should have. And it might have been this pen's fault because I loved this pen so much. And I also found a lot of joy writing with this pen. And it kind of got me thinking about the pens and ink combinations that we love, But do we love them as much as we do as a standalone pen? Does how much we love this pen change based on whatever else is inked in the lineup this month? And like I said, it was just a great pen, and I really enjoyed using this. So I'm going to be moving this forward into May. I think it just didn't get as much use. I just didn't grab for it as much, even though everything about it was amazing, because of these two other pens that I had in the lineup. So, yep, excited about having this in May. And then this one is the one that was a total dud. Like a total dud. You can't see it on this one because this is a journal book that I have dedicated to my channel. I don't do any journaling or anything else in here, but I will tell you that when I was trying to journal with this pen and ink combination, and this previously had Lennon Toolbar Bubble Tea in it, I was writing on the other side of a piece of paper. Like I was writing on this left-hand side, and I had previously done some writing with a darker ink on the other side, and I couldn't even see the ink. And that's really a deal breaker for me. And I actually called that out when I was doing my, the 8 more pen questions. Where was that? Here it is. What is an absolute deal breaker for you? And it really was that the pen is hard to incorporate into it. It's just hard to use, hard to read, hard to just use for everyday writing. Actually, now that I'm looking at this, I wrote all of these answers with my Pilot Custom 823, and you can even see this is not shading. This is hard starts. On these answers. So it was, as much as I tried to love that Pilot Custom 823 with that pairing, I'm glad that's not done. That's not moving forward. Anyway, so this one, not good. And I thought maybe it would be good, but it wasn't. So I decided, I wrote with it initially after I inked it. I came back a few days later and it was a little bit darker, but still really hard to read. And so then I went to the Big Apple Pen Club meetup, and one of the samples that I got was Robert Oster Heart of Gold. And when somebody was telling me about this, they said it's really like writing with liquid gold. So I was like, okay, maybe liquid gold is what I need. That's probably the thing that's going to save this pen. And so I did a little bit of swatching here to decide what pen I was going to ink, what ink I was going to put into this pen. And I selected the Robert Oster Heart of Gold. And I was like, okay, that's going to do it. But you know what? It didn't really do it. So I just didn't reach for it. This is still inked. I've used it maybe one time or maybe twice since I put this ink into it. So this is the writing with the Robert Oster Heart of Gold, and it was just too unreadable with this other one, is what I've said. So I'm not sure I'm even loving this pairing. This is not a very large cartridge. This is one of those bladder cartridges, and so this shouldn't be, it's not too full, so I shouldn't have any real difficulty finishing this out. So I will find a way to use this, and then that will be it for that pairing. So I gave it an F. I gave it a 2.4. So for the writing experience, and this is the measurement for the original pairing, I gave it a 4 on the writing experience. I gave it a 1 on versatility and reliability, because if it's not readable, it's not versatile, and that means it's not reliable to me. I also wouldn't share it. I gave it a 2. On personal enjoyment, I gave it a 0. So that should tell you. That's probably the first time I've ever given any pen an ink pairing a 0 in any of these categories that I'm measuring. And it got an average score of 2.4, like I said, with an F. This was the worst dud, not only of this lineup, but maybe all time ever in life. So I will not be reusing that original pairing. And what I've decided to do is any of this, I'm going to use this ink in art. So I just put a little bit of background shading. I kind of just did some ink swatching around here. I'm going to use it for other things. I can't use it for for writing, but I don't want to completely throw out the bottle. It's just not going to be used for its original fountain pen intended purpose of writing in a fountain pen. The next pen I had inked was my Diamine, my Pilot Prera in a medium nib, and it was inked with Diamine Flame, which was an ink vent ink that I got in January of 2024 at the Philly Pen Show. I purchased an ink from a vendor, and he had a little sample box of inks, and he gave me one of those little ink vent bottles, and I was excited about the pairing. I thought, yeah, that's going to be great. I'm going to love how this looks, and I don't not love it, but I just don't think I like orange ink. So I gave it a 7 for the writing experience. I gave it a 7 for versatility and reliability, and also a 7 for shareability. In terms of personal enjoyment, I gave it a 4. And oops, you know what? I forgot to tell you, I gave it a 6 for aesthetics. And on the Pilot Metropolitan, I think I forgot to tell you, I gave it a 5 for aesthetics. Because, yeah, I mean, once I moved the other one in there, I thought it was going to look good, but it just kind of really didn't. So, as I was writing with this, I kept hearing my friend Janet in my brain, because she always says this funny phrase where, she'll say something like, who doesn't like this, or who doesn't like that? And then she'll invoke the monster clause, where she'll say, only a monster doesn't like these things. So, who doesn't like a festival in springtime? Only monsters don't like festivals in springtime. So I was thinking, who doesn't love an orange ink? Who doesn't like an orange ink? And then I wrote in here, or like my friend Janet would say, only monsters don't like orange ink. So shout out to my friend Janet. She was in my brain as I was trying to decide why I didn't really like this, and if I was bold enough, if I was going to be monstrous enough to say that I don't like orange inks. Okay, and then the last pen that I had inked this last month was my Pilot Vanishing Point in a fine nib, and I had it inked, and I still have it inked. I'm almost done with this fill, but I still have it inked with a little bit of Pilot Blue, and I got this ink in January 2025. It came in the box when I bought my Grail pen, my Pilot Custom 823, and so this was the first time I inked this. I used this ink in a pen, so it was the first time I inked anything up with it. And it was nice. It was a very reliable, easy to use, well-behaved blue. And in the fine nib, it made it very easy for me to use in my daily writing, in my planning. So, I gave this a 9 for aesthetics because, of course, it's a beautiful ink. The pairing is really nice. And Pilot inks in Pilot pens, it really is. I mean, they're meant for each other, obviously, and this pairing really didn't disappoint. So I gave it a 9 on aesthetics, I gave it a 10 on the writing experience, a 10 on versatility and reliability, a 10 on shareability, and a 10 on personal enjoyment. So it was absolutely all around a very practical pen, a very practical writing experience. I was glad to have it in the lineup. I used it a ton for work notes and plannings, not so much for journaling. When I'm journaling, I like to really have a broader nib, a wetter writing experience, and this just wasn't that. It was totally fit for purpose. It did exactly what I needed it to do in my daily planning for work. And I think probably, I gave it a 9.8, gave it an A plus. I think probably I just didn't grab for this because of the other pens that I had in the lineup. Like this one. I mean, this one, I couldn't stop grabbing for that one. So everything else kind of paled in comparison to that writing experience, even this perfect pen. So yeah, that's kind of got me thinking about, like I was saying earlier in the video, it's kind of got me thinking about this concept of, if I absolutely love a pen, if I absolutely love it, do I love it as much as I love it as a standalone pen? Do I also love it when another pen I love shows up? And what am I grabbing for, and why am I grabbing for that? So I've been journaling a lot about that concept, because as I think through and start reflecting on these pairings, that's just on my mind a lot. So let's talk about, overall what these pairings look like. I'll do a radar chart for this as well. I'll put that radar chart up. So for those of you who are new to my recap of my prior month, I like to think about all of those 5 categories: the aesthetics, the writing experience, versatility, reliability, shareability, and personal enjoyment for each pairing. And then I measure all of those pens in all of those categories against each other. And it was pretty astounding to me because, as you can see, there are some pens that just get 10s or 9s all the way across the board. And then you've got a few right here in the middle that just, in some areas, they were just not great. And so as I look back on how I'm measuring all of my pens and inks against these categories, it's really starting to give me some really interesting insights to reflect back on. So let me talk then. That leads me to what else I want to do when we get to June. So I'm trying to decide for June if I'm going to do a currently inked or not. What I might do is just finish out the different fills that I have a little bit of ink left and just get through all of my fills and really enjoy the pens that I have inked, or if some of them like this, if I don't enjoy them, just, find a way to use them up, maybe in art, or maybe just clean them out and get to a fresh start starting in July. So I'm thinking about maybe not doing a currently inked, not really sure. So we'll see how that goes. Instead, like I said, I'll be working through any pens that I have that may still have a tiny bit of ink in them. And I may also do 2 things. Let me know what you think about this. I may also go through my bottled inks and just do a swatch fest and do swatches of all of my different inks. I have, oh my goodness, how many? I think I may have about 20 inks or so. I think it's around 20 inks or so. And I might just go and just swatch them all out so that you can see what my bottled ink collection looks like. And I may also do a fountain pen collection video. So let me know if you'd be interested in either of those instead of a currently inked, or if you would like to see a currently inked for June 2025. Then also at the end of June, I am going to be doing a January, February, March, April, May, June. Yeah, it's time. At the end of June, I'm going to do my ink bottle weigh-in. So I have a series on my channel where I am measuring my bottled inks and what, they weighed at the start of the year. And at the end of every quarter, I'm weighing them all in ounces and grams so I can see how much ink I use in any given year period. Now, I already know how much ink I used last quarter, and if you want to check out that video, I will link it in the description so you can see how I did and kind of get a sense of what that ink weigh-in looks like, and really introducing that concept on my channel. But the quarterly ink weigh-in is going to happen at the end of June 2025. I also plan to do a year-to-date flip through of this journal and my currently inks and kind of how I've been using my inks, playing with them as part of this Urban Ink Spot channel. So that's really what I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that you found something interesting in this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye.